Hi. For 2 weeks in a row, I get to say live from New York. Ted Cohen here. This is Connected With. It's great to be back, and I'm back here. This is not a plug. This is just I love being here. I'm back at my room in the Ace Hotel, and it's my home away from home. And I do want to do a shout out to Andy and Freddie and Cody and all the folks here. They've been wonderful. This is literally where I live when I don't live in LA. So it's great to be here. We have an amazing guest today who I'm going to bring on in a moment, who I've known for a while, and proud to call him a friend and a colleague and a peer. But the one thing I wanted to touch on today is the story that came out earlier this week / end of last week, where they announced Rob Stringer, the CEO of Sony Music, that they were going to forgive unrecouped balances on legacy artists or artists that were signed prior to the year 2000, and that they were going to start paying them royalties. The hiccup that we need to figure out and what we need to discuss at some point here is if they end the recoupment process, and if an artist is supposed to then get ownership of their masters after recoupment, if you stop crediting money toward recoupment, then they never get their masters. We're going to have to figure out how that works. I've been looking to see if anybody's addressed that yet, and it's, I think, the elephant in the room of an otherwise great decision by Sony to start paying artists that haven't seen royalties maybe in many years. So if we can figure out that other part of the hiccup, this is probably a really great moment for labels, recognizing the value of the artists that help build them. But now I do want to bring on my guest. I met Vincent Favrat at South by Southwest about 6 years ago. We had a meeting in my room in the Austin Hilton. He explained that he was then working for a company called Musimap that was doing AI-based music recommendation. They became a client of ours. That at that point, a year later, we had worked together for a year. He introduced me to Jerome Vanoff, who is the co-founder or founder, I'm not sure, but a wonderful human being, of Lean Square Ventures in Liège, Belgium. And they were putting on a conference called Wallifornia. I talk about, everyone who knows me, I talk about, serendipity has affected my life, my entire career. Happening to walk into a room in Chicago in 1977, and Jobs and Wozniak are there demoing the Apple I computer, and got to know Stephen Woz at that point, which changed the trajectory of my career. In the same mode, I ended up going to Wallifornia. I spoke. I then met John Zazzaro, who was living in Austin, sip of water, and asked me to come to Austin after Wallifornia to meet Paul O'Brien. And now I'm part of Media Tech Ventures. Vincent and I have stayed in touch. He's doing some really great things. I'm going to let him tell you about it. But he really is a multi-hyphenate. And again, for those of you who know me, he's a mensch, which makes him very important in my life. So Vincent Favrat, welcome to Connected With.
Many thanks, Ted. I'm first humbled to be speaking with you at Connected. You spoke about this first meeting at South by Southwest, and I think one of maybe my qualities is that I'm persistent. So in these years, I really wanted to connect with you because I was really impressed by what you had achieved in the field, and so it's really nice to close the loop and to to exchange casually today on this occasion. So thanks for the opportunity. Excited to explore with you.
This is not a pitch, but this is an interesting moment. You are the first former client that I've ever had on the show. So actually, that's not. There's one other, but it was a long time ago. Explain, if you can, for people out there who know me but have never worked with me, what was the experience? What's it like in terms of trying to like get my ADD approach to working with somebody?
Yes, I think it's you can decide who you'd like to speak to, and depending on who is your interlocutor, then you can step up your game to be at the right level, right? So it's worth, when you speak to investors, when you speak to fellow entrepreneurs, when you speak to inspirational figures in the industry. And I think for me that was kind of this, having the access to the US and working closely on this relation where I get challenged, I can learn from a mentor. I would call you a mentor in this sense, and then get the direct connection with the key players in the US, knowing that at the time Musimap was not a US based company, and you have to, coming from fragmented Europe with a great level of innovation, taking this innovation and bringing it to the attention of the right people. So I think it was a great learning curve, as we all have in the entrepreneurship roller coaster, I would say. And so I was glad to do this journey, partly with you, and then continuing that with other people and companies.
I want to share one anecdote with everybody. I mean, my approach to working with a innovator like Vincent is trying to get them comfortable on. This isn't like nuclear fission or anything. It's basically it's about relationships. It's about people trusting each other and then getting to know you and then testing technology and whatever. But I remember the first meeting that we ever did was with Peter Kafka, who was at Vox Media. He had come over from Wall Street Journal over to Recode, which was acquired by Vox. And we're sitting in the very first meeting, and you open up your laptop and you start showing him the PowerPoint. And Peter, who's very much like me, goes, wait a minute, stop. Tell me about you. How did you get into he wanted to know the backstory. He wanted to know you before he knew what the technology was about. And it became a very insightful meeting for both of us. But I think for you, of like, if you get people comfortable that they know that you've got the goods, then you don't have to rush through a presentation. You don't have to worry. If it was a 30-minute meeting, it could end up being a 2-hour meeting if it works. But I remember Peter just going, whoa, stop. Close the laptop. Tell me about you. And
it was a very interesting experience. I think I see startup as a dynamic startups as dynamic prototyping units, constantly at the verge of collapsing, of bankruptcy. So it's a very dark way to see it, but it's an exciting journey with a lot of ups and downs, and having the space to experiment the right way, not to lose the opportunities to play the right card at the right moment. It's also a question of timing. When do you speak with whom? With what type of assets, what type of storytelling, how mature are you in pitching to people? As an entrepreneur, you tell the same story or declination of the same story hundreds of times, but you have to format the storytelling to the audience and win the right points when needed. And exactly. I think it's a bit, if I may make this parallel, it's a bit like live music business, right? You don't book a band for 2,000-3,000 concert hall when they kind of barely excite the crowd in a 60 to 100 people hall, right? There is a point in the career development, and you have to accompany people to be at the right place at the right time, and so that it's constructive and that the growth path is a healthy one. And I think that's key. For me, in the startup, there are different phases in the life of an entrepreneur, and what I decided to do after I left Musimap was to focus on one specific phase, which is the transition between startup and scale up.
Right.
When I say scale up, I mean mini newborn scale up, right? So if you say, this OCDE definition of that, 3 years of heavy growth and getting to over 1 million in recurring revenues, and you have a team of 15, 20 people growing. I found a lot of people, in the earliest phase, like friends and family and business angels and kind of seed funds. And then you have the VC world, right? And the VCs, they would expect traditionally that you reach these milestones already and that you are already thriving and so on. And in this long journey of the entrepreneur, there is what you call very often the death valley, right? So you have a lot of chances to die, not as a human being, but as a startup, when you build your MVP and when you try to go to your beta test. Jason Calacanis is saying like 85% die before the MVP, 85% die again before the beta test. And then if you reach this kind of product and you try to find your product market fit, you very often end up in a situation where you have turnover, you have a great product, you have signs of traction, but the journey is not over yet, not at all. It's just starting, in fact. And you have to convince, you have to pull it off. You have to jump this growth chasm, so to speak, like this gap that you have, and you have to fight against, a cash flow issue. You have to manage things well. You have to put in place many processes. You have to work on your governance. You have to, in terms of teams, you have to transition to everybody is great and multifunctional to achieve a lot of things. We need to have like a very, compartmentalized way of working, because when you're 25, you have to execute and you have to put these management systems in place. You have to find the right way to grow the sales force of the organization and choose the right go-to-market and fine-tune your product market fit. And this is a phase where I believe entrepreneurs are very fragile, and where there are not a lot of support or a lot of people that they can have the support of. So I decided to take this as my specialty. So that's what I do with the ScaleUp Factory. To come on board, so startup usually 5 to 10 people, 200,000-300,000 in turnover, and okay, let's take this journey and let's help them to cross the death valley. So you can call me a bit masochist, but that's what I'm doing, because I think there is a real need there, and I'm ScaleUp Factory because I want to contribute to create scale-ups, and scale-ups
that's the challenge. If you look at it, the band metaphor, the music metaphor is perfect. The other metaphor is sometimes startups are like cute children in 5, 6, 7 years old. They're adorable, and then they go through the ugly phase. And then the ones that come out of it, you have companies that get to a point and they think that the beta is now live, we've made it, and they don't realize this is just this is the beginning of the journey, not the end of the journey. I want to go back to the beginning of your career. I know you've always loved music. We've talked about it privately, and I won't go through that. But when did music become part of your career? What was the beginning where music was something that you received either income or knowledge from, but you were quote working?
Music was a medicine against boredom, right? So I was in high school really bored of that, and about this, learning in this very old-fashioned way. And I began to do like a first mini festival for the high school with 2,000-3,000 people, and I liked it. So it's like you're managing a music event, and so I went to a phase where I found a jazz club, kind of a music venue, where an old lady was running it, but not at the top of the capability. So I convinced her to let me have a club and run it. And I was like 17, I think, at this time. So I was, so I organized. Okay. I organized like maybe 100 concerts there, 200, and then I went to co-organizing a jazz festival, and which was Lausanne Jazz Festival, which led me to become the press officer of of Montreux Jazz Festival, which for me was a bit...
How did you meet Claude Nobs? You met him in LA, or where did you meet him?
No, actually, for me, Claude was kind of a figure that is kind of an inspirational figure, and I wanted to know, how does the magic happen?
And for those of you, because we're talking in shorthand, Claude Nobs was the creator and the head of the Montreux Jazz Festival. I never got to go to his house, but from what I understand, the most spectacular music collection and the most spectacular view of the world from his living room out over Lake Geneva.
Yeah, in Lake Geneva. So he combined the passion for tourism, his hometown Montreux, that he puts on the map of music and map of the world for this reason, and his passion for music. What I did with Claude is that I got to a point where I really wanted to work for the Montreux Jazz Festival, and I think I applied 7 times or 6 times to Montreux in different, I wanted to be program planner of Montreux, which, I'm sad did not happen. But and at the end, they accepted, 2 things. So first, Claude accepted to be the godfather of a musical project I was running. So improvised electronic music duo with a lot of guests like Nils Peter Molva, Eric Truffat, and rap singers and so on. And he accepted to be the godfather of that. And then they were searching for somebody that could take care of the communication, but was not from the communication part, And I said, yes, I'm in. So I jumped in, and I had the pleasure to work with him in Montreux for a while, and And
so
one
let
thing
me ask you a question there. Mm-hmm. When you said yes, I can do that, you knew internally you probably could. Did you totally know you could do it, or did you take the leap?
No, I think what is important in my part, I think, is that I rely on uncertainty. I rely on the urgency is something that is very creative in my side, and in my eyes, and stress is a productivity factor. Of course, you should not become the slave of stress, right? So you have to, but as for a musician, right? If you have like a session and there is stress, but the good stress, and at the verb of creativity, you can do great things. So I kind of worked with this. So I did not know I could do it. I had published helped publish a few hundred articles on this project and on the Festival of Jazz in Lausanne and so on. So I knew how to do it more or less. So what I did, one of the big things I did at Montreux was to convince Claude to do the CNN Revealed. It's kind of a CNN international show on Claude Nobs, 30 minutes, I think. And for this one, he did not want to make it because it was really complicated in terms of right clearance. So it was Santana, it was B.B. King, Quincy, everybody was in it, and I kind of forced my way to do that. And right. and from his point of view, it was the biggest hit in terms of visibility for the festival ever. And I was really happy that I persisted in doing that. It's a bit. Claude was the nicest. Most adorable king or despot that I knew of. He was not an easy person in my eyes. It's a kind of tyrant, but a lovely tyrant. And we had a lot of.
I think the kind word is impresario.
Yes. Yeah, so there were some interesting episodes, like there was always the biggest media from France that were coming to the chalet or whatever, and he was, sometimes he did not want to do it. So he was, we were playing hide and seek in the different chalet. I needed to find him back and to bring him to that. So a lot of charm with Claude Nobs as a character, and I have a huge respect for what he achieved. In the sense that he had like this technological vision, record everything from the first year onward in the highest quality of the time, create a kind of now it's UNESCO World Heritage, patrimony for the future generation, and right. And he had this vision. He did 4K before, he did in high resolution before the other, and even this patrimony of the Claude Nobs foundation is now has been digitized fully, right? And it has been kind of upgraded in the best possible formats with algorithm, with EPFL, which is one of the kind of the Swiss MIT with ETI, if you want. And so that kind of it's aligned with the legacy of Claude. And this is where
I never got to go to Montreux. It's one of my great regrets. I knew Claude in his parallel life, in his role with Warner Records.
Yep.
He would come to LA. I thought he was the most charming human being I'd ever met. I would see him at Midem. I would see him out of his element, and he always made me feel like I'd known him for years. He was He when in his element running Montreux, I could see where he could be, P.T. Barnum, and everything's got to go right. Seeing him in more social settings in Burbank or in Cannes, he was, I think, a little more at ease. So I never saw the enfant terrible.
No, but that's great. I'm not saying that in any bad way. I mean,
no, I know.
In anecdote on that, for example, for the 40th anniversary, we had this talk internally. Should we do like kind of a synthesis of the history of Montreux per decade, like nice thing on the leaflet, right, on the back? And I wanted, I was advocating for that, and the answer was no, basically. And Claude, before the thing got to went to print, just the day before at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, he called and he said to Mathieu Jaton, who is now the director of the festival, he said, that was a damn good idea, let's do it. So we said, Claude, it's like, it's tomorrow at 10, the thing goes to print, it's 1.5 million leaflet. So we cannot just improvise with this. And I really liked, I learned a lot from this little event. He said, let's do it, And then Mathieu and I organized that, we took whatever resources were necessary to make things happen. And we did the text, like 40 years of history, studying the history of the festival until 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe. And then between 4 and 7, we had that translated in English because we had it, to language. And then at 10, it went to be printed at 1.5 million exemplary. And I think, like Claude, when he received the text, normally it was really difficult for the nuances of, it was his baby, the festival. He read the text, he said, like, oh, I want to change one comma, and then let's roll. And that's really like it was a huge learning for me in terms of startup innovation. Yeah, because if you have a leader that you trust and the team is aligned, don't tell me it's not possible, right?
All right, a great musician, again, using music and business. A great musician or a great businessman knows how to improvise and how to basically, do, whether they're little improvisations or big improvisations. When Todd Rundgren, I worked with years ago, and he did a concert in Cincinnati, and it was all electronic. He had him and 2 other he had Jean-Yves Labatt, who was M. Frog, and Roger Powell, and him on synth. About 5 minutes before the concert starting, they discovered that someone in the audience had cut the audio cable from the stage to the board, literally cut through the audio snake. They went and got an acoustic piano, a stand-up bass, some beatboxes and whatever, and Todd did Todd Unplugged with no mic, with no PA. They were on the edge of the stage and they did it almost Nashville style. And they did like 20 minutes for the audience and said, we'll be back tomorrow. Everything will be fixed. We didn't want you to leave without hearing some music. He didn't storm off stage. It's those moments that you go, that's cool. And in business, I remember Bill Gates was debuting a version of Windows at CES, and it crashed, and he talked through it. He didn't walk off stage. You deal with it and you improvise, and sometimes you end up growing from that in a way you never would have.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think for me, an experienced entrepreneur is an entrepreneur that saved his startup from a certain death at least 6 times, right? Because then you have seen death in the mirror, right? And you know what it is, and you have kind of humility, and you know how to navigate more, and you don't stress when there is a little hurdle. And this is what I'm expecting also in a founder, to have this kind of critical distance and the right tools to make this happen. And there can be many problems on how to improvise and stuff. Claude, for example, they are this famous story, of course. I don't want to say like Smoke on the Water, with Deep Purple and on the lake, and but all of this thing, but also under pressure, like the fact to have like Queen and Mercury and David Bowie home because he was a great cook and so on, and to say, okay, you guys have never done this, and why don't we go to the Montes? Why don't we go to try something out? And this is the a hit that is wonderful. So I think it's putting people in the right staging, in the right setting, encouraging, aligning the values, aligning the project. I think with Claude Nobs, what I learned also is that he was very true to himself, right? he has this passion for his little city, Montreux, in Switzerland, and for music and for black music. And what he wanted to do is to be the center, the central point, the connection point between, I would say, Afro-American music. I mean, like American music, starting with jazz and all of,
and Quincy was at the core of that.
So he wanted to bring the best of the US in one point in Europe, and he did that. And by that, he safeguarded like also a patrimony that might be lost some places in the US. So I think it's it was an interesting vision, and he was true to himself, and he could like drive a team in the same direction to achieve that. I think
but that's how Quincy became involved. Integral to Montreux in a lot of ways.
I mean, Quincy was really considering Claude as a brother, like you would say. I think he co-produced the festival between 91 and 93, and I think they would let creativity flow, right? And maybe the budget was not super aligned, but they would say, okay, let's go crazy, let's make exclusive nights, something that never happened before. It's not about repeating the same act that the bands play on stage. It's about let's create something new, and there is unique nights that you will not see anywhere in the world thanks to this. So they were very close. I think this parallel between the music world and entrepreneurship is kind of interesting. I remember, because I think today is like Viva Tech is starting in Paris, this huge conference for technology. And, you find your ways and you trick the system sometimes. One time I was there and I wanted to reach out to Eric Schmidt from obviously Alphabet, and he was speaking, and of course, obviously I could not reach to him. So what I did is that, I said, this is like a music festival, right? So they are backstage, and I know how backstage works. So I made my way through backstage, and when he came out from the backstage, I could give him his card. He thought I was a security guy. So I opened his car and I gave him my card, and he went in the car. So of course he never called me back, but you can find your ways, also improvising a bit in how you reach out to people and you achieve your objectives.
So how did you renew the relationship with, you met Quincy at Montreux, then you did Musimap, and now you're working with Quincy again in a startup, ScaleUp Factory. How did you renew and refresh that relationship?
Yeah. So first, what I should say is that Quincy is probably the coolest and the most charming person I've met in my life. So he has this charisma and so on, and a lot of good values that he's perspiring good values. And I think it's something that I find very interesting, is about like creative, like positive, inclusive future, and he's true to that. Can you believe that he worked with Martin Luther King back in the day? He's like very thoroughly advancing things for the music, for the entertainment business, and for like education and other things. So what I like about Quincy also is that he's really well known as the producer of Michael Jackson and Sinatra and so on, but he's less known as an audiovisual producer, right? So he did launch the career of Will Smith with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which would be rebooted now for another thing. Everything they do a remake 25 years later because it was too good. So this, but he also launched Oprah Winfrey with The Color Purple with 11 nominations in the Grammys, in the Oscars, and he's an entrepreneur, so he did invest very early in Spotify. He did a joint venture with Time Warner at the time. All of this is important in his way. So I think Quincy is still creative. And for example, last week, I think 10 days ago, he just contributed to launch One-Off, which is an NFT, and he raised 63 million. Based on his name and the values he represents, right? And this NFT is solving one of the main the three main problems of NFT, which is the ecological impact of this. So that was a long bracket, but I met Quincy at Montreux. I wanted to do a film. I wanted to produce a film with telling the cross story of the Ertegun brothers, right? The founder of Atlantic Records, Claude Nobs, and Quincy Jones, because they became very close friends. It was kind of a triangle with the best producer in labels, the best producer in music producer, and in my eyes, one of the best producer in live music. And I wanted to show that they were a bit, challengers, or how would you say that? Outsiders in their own things. The Ertegun brothers.
I'm not. Just to make sure, I'll let people know, we're talking about Ahmet Ertegun and Nesuhi Ertegun.
That's
who
correct.
were the co-founders of Atlantic Records, who were just brilliant, again, entrepreneurs.
But I like that because they were migrants, so to speak. Like in this case, they were son of a diplomat. So but they were Turkish people coming to the US, and with this kind of not coming from there, they managed to take the black music, Afro-American music, and to push it and to be the main player in that.
Right.
Claude Nobs was somebody that is kind of little in size, and is from a little city in Switzerland. Is not very well known for music anyway, and is a homosexual. It's not like the typical thing that you would expect. And Quincy was very poor in the suburb of Chicago, like really struggling with his family to kind of make it to eat something proper for the meal. And,
right.
And these 3 men, they kind of outsiders that brought this disruption and this massive value creation. And I think this is worth for entrepreneurship. A lot of entrepreneurs come from different backgrounds, change the game, are game changers, and make their vision happen. And they are the true heroes for me of today and tomorrow. And I really admire their journey. Of course, it's a very difficult, journey. So personally, I want to contribute to being their kind of super assistant to kind of power their growth to a healthy path, and that's what I'm doing. But so I wanted to do this, to do this film with Nobs, and I told him about that, and he was really enthusiastic about the thing, and he told me, let's get the guy that did the Blue series to do that, and I said, who is that? Like Blue series, this guy, and then it was Martin Scorsese that he wanted. So he wanted Martin Scorsese for the film. So we talked about that. So there is no limit for Quincy and Claude Nobs. So
and
this project did not.
It's one phone call away.
Yeah,
it's literally like one phone call. I want to interrupt for 1 second and let everybody know, if you have any questions, you can post them on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. Vincent is a font of knowledge and experience. But if you have anything that you want to ask, jump in. So you've been working on Qwest TV.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Yeah.
Explain the recipe for Qwest TV.
So the premise of that is, there is this third revolution in TV, right? OTT TV 3.0. So shifting from cable to internet, led TV. And in that, Quincy was really sad that there was not in the US kind of a premium music channel for, I would say, the top of the second third, right? And what you call maybe like classical music, like jazz music and groove and all of this, and also like high quality hip hop, electronic music, and so on. So he met with Reza Akbarali, who is a really talented impresario, jazz producer. I mean, he made like 1,600 long feature for music, classical music, jazz, and electronic music. And they decided together to do this kind of US-led mezzo, so to speak, to take a European point of reference. But they decided to do it like led by minorities, led by their people. Like MTV, for example, was created by white people for white audience. It was very difficult to get like a black artist, and Quincy was the first, as he has always done, like to push the doors and to say, okay, Michael Jackson, Billie Jean, High Rotation is the first black artist that does that on MTV. And
I have to tell you a serendipity moment. My ex-wife, who is seriously, my ex-wife was one of the amazing people I've known in my life. She wrote the editorial in Billboard. She was the video editor at Billboard, and wrote a Billboard editorial, which almost got her fired, about that MTV should stop that them not playing Michael Jackson was a cultural crime. And then they started, it basically provided part of that impetus. And then she was never allowed to write another editorial again.
There are consequences. Huh? I think it's something that Quincy said as well, is it needs individual efforts to push, to push boundaries. And I think what he wanted to do with Qwest, or that's my interpretation, is to say, okay, we are in a world that is post-nationalism,
right?
Post-race, the race concept. So he's to say, he was kind of saying like the future is a mix, right? If I do my DNA test now, you would be astonished to know that I'm 2% Nigerian, and that I have roots in
I got that letter from you.
You can see that.
You were going to send me money. No, I'm kidding.
So what I mean by that is like everybody has kind of different roots. We all come from African roots at the end of the day. So the idea is like the future will be mixed, and we can celebrate this diversity. And when in the particular context of the US and under Trump before, there was this event. I'm speaking about that because we are close to Juneteenth, right? Which is the day, obviously where slavery was abolished, and so it's an important day for
this Saturday. Yes,
this particular theme. It's the 19th, Juneteenth, and at this point there was the dramatic event that happened to Mr. Floyd, and so the point with Quincy is being very active with this, but we said at Qwest, we should do something more, right? Let's do something. So we decided to take this premium content, so 1,300 long feature documentaries and long features on music, and to offer them to all schools in the world, basically for free, with the motto, let's celebrate diversity. Let's see the great achievement of all of the people that came before us, and bring back, influencing positively, saying that there should be respect there because the achievement is at a splendid level. And we should be all proud of that. It's part of the American culture. It's part of the world's heritage. So we did that, and now 1,000 universities and schools have benefited from that, from Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, and all of them, to conservatory or high schools in California. The whole district is as that. So it was always for Quincy, I think, just to say, okay, let's do something. Let's not only speak. Let's do something that is significant and that is relevant to push the boundaries. And I think that's remarkable.
Very cool. What else are you working on right now? One of the things that we do at Media Tech Ventures is we have an incubator program. Mm-hmm. So we're basically preschool and elementary school for startups, and try and then help them ease their way into middle school and high school. When you talk about that desert, that chasm, what was the book, the Entrepreneur's Dilemma, or there was a book about how do you deal, crossing the chasm. What is the best advice? If there are people that are listening that are doing media startups, in terms of, the one thing I liked about Jerome when you introduced me to Jerome at Lean Square, and when John and I talk to him all the time, is they preach the idea of, don't squander your investment. You don't need big offices. You need, to funnel the investment into brain power and developing your product, not into getting new desk chairs. So
yeah, I think
what's your key advice when you start working with a startup that's in that middle chasm?
Yeah, I would say first, it's easy to get distracted by incubators and accelerators. And I'm not speaking about yours because I can only recommend it. But I think, when you have too much comfort with a nice ping pong ping pong table and nice coaches that nurture you at one point, it's not about that. You have to come from the market. You have to take your ideas and constantly get feedback. Find sometimes also let go. Say, okay, I had this direction, but it's not working. So let's have a realistic, lucid look at that, and let's pivot, or let's change the model. Let's adjust. For me, innovation is made out of kind of experiments. So of course, some of the experiments will not be successful, but it's important to know what your core values are, to align the team with this, find the right partners. This is really, really important from the start. Be careful not to
back to the founders. One of the things that's happened over the years, I've gotten invited to join boards from time to time.
Yeah.
And I won't join the board unless I'm really impressed with the founders. And then in 2 cases, I had the VCs say, we're throwing the founders out. And I'm like, but they're the reason you invested. And what is your philosophy? If the founders, again, can improvise, can be flexible, can, do that, what's your feeling on, founders being either marginalized or sent to the cornfield?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think you have to adapt, the different phases in your development and the different people you speak with. So when you go to to fine tune your value proposition and so on, you speak with little players, mid-sized players, and you kind of you warm up, and once demo and everything is solid, then you go to middle-sized player, and then you go to the big fish, so that you can have like license big contract and so on. So I think there is kind of a pace. It's not like, of course, you should not wait too long. So I think I would advise to always go full force confronting the market and have this feedback. And but at the same time, to make sure that you play the right card at the right time. And I think there is for me there are some misconception, or at least it's my opinion, on what I call creative tech, or this when attendee was asking about media tech and so on. So what I call creative tech, for me, it's a mix between media tech, culture tech, art tech, and the creative industries, let's say. What is kind of based on creativity and intersecting with larger markets, and how you go with that. So this industry is not a small industry. So I think there is kind of a self-confidence to be won back there, because if you look at, I'm speaking more for Europe than for the US, but if I look at the segment or the best asset class that VC could find in Europe in the last years, it's not biotech, it's not fintech, it's not, it's creative tech. And people sometimes are astonished of that. It's partly based on the fact that you have giants that emerge, right? You can speak of Supercell, of King.com, and the gaming space. You have Spotify, that is a giant with 670 billion plus, and then it grows. You have Unity. You have a lot of these players that are very large size players and that generate a massive value. Gaming is a good example, because with a little studio, like independent people, you kind of you don't have this gatekeeper and this problem on eating the margin. You can kind of get direct to massive sales, and you create unicorns very, very quickly. So if you master this, you can be proud of this, and you can kind of take the opportunities in these sections.
Why don't you take a look at this question? We're going to do a couple of questions right now. Corby Kistler has the first question here. Take a look at this, and we'd love your opinion.
Yeah, I think the huge industries, in my eyes, is not a problem, because it's good to have a big industry. I mean, the question is how replicable it is. Is it an idea that thousands of people worked on? Do you have a clear view on the competitive landscape? And most of it, what is your differentiator? What makes your tech not replicable or interesting? And what is the path? Are you working towards kind of an IPO? Are you working towards a mid-size exit? Having a cold look on that, and being able to have a healthy path on this way to manage expectations, and to have a clear road on that. I think it's very positive to tackle large markets, and it should be the case if you are a VC. I mean, a startup succeed in 8 to 10 years, right? So either for an IPO or trade sale. It's not like, of course, in digital you have some startups that go after 2 or 3 years, but it's not the majority of the cases, and it's also not necessarily super young people. It's sometimes experienced entrepreneurs that failed or succeeded several times, that find the right angle, don't make the same mistakes, go very quickly into the game. So I would be sensitive to understand the drive of the founders and the team, to understand what obsessions they have, because I want to be sure that this person wants to fix this issue, and that he will go full force until this is fixed. Perseverance is really, really key. So I want to understand that in a founder. And then I want to understand that he has enough experience to avoid the hurdles, and not letting the thing go in when there are really big problems, because there will be big problems. And I think there is kind of a mediatization of startups where startuppers are really become icons, but there is the dark side of entrepreneurship, where it's blood, sweat, and tears, and people like burning out, being totally, and this is a reality. We have to face that too. So I think it's this kind of balance. It's not being like naive about the iconic thing that this entrepreneur come and it's super easy and the journey is very nice and it's sunshine and rainbow. And at the same time, it's not like, for me, what is important is that failure is not an option. It doesn't mean that you will burn out instead of if you cannot anymore. Of course, there is a limit to that. But this is a question, this is a question of mindset. It's not like a plan B or something. It's something that is an obsession. You want to solve it, and you work hard till the work is done. And this is the type of drive I want. One other thing is that the wavelength, and I take this analogy with music again. It should be like I drive, and the wavelength should be really great. I'm based in Geneva, Switzerland, for example, where that is like ranked #1 in innovation since years now. Right. So it's super high for that. But the entrepreneurial spirit is sometimes a bit lower in my eyes. And I want to see not only innovation, not only the brilliant mind and the great team, but I want to see the wavelength. I want to make sure that these people are highly driven and that they will push at the right speed to adapt to the market, find the solution, avoid the problems, and make it.
Then we have another question that is very timely from Emperor Augustus, who is very impressive here.
Yeah, I think on the European element. So I'm advocating for more Europe, and I must say, at the risk of being a bit disappointing, that for me Europe doesn't really exist. It's not existing in the sense of a unified digital market where you can access 550 million people. If it were the case, it would be much easier to scale a business in Europe rather than in the US.
When you're saying it's not homogeneous across borders.
Yeah, and the mindset is not really there to consider that as you even like in this incubator startup investment. It's kind of your region, your country, your thing. I think this concentration of talent and this drive to achieve something that works for all of the continent, or I think there is a lot of work to be done there. I think Macron has been very startup oriented in terms of mindset since the start. I think he's inspiring people in this way, and I think France, notably France and Germany, can do a lot to foster the ecosystem and push creativity and innovation in Europe generally. I think Europe has brilliant entrepreneurs, and I think the bright days are coming up. If we speak about creative tech, Europe is performing very strongly. In the last years, what is happening now is that you see maybe in creative tech, like about 200 raises of more than 10 million in the last year, like on average 50 million. Of course, like more than 50% is still in the US side, but it's growing in Europe. And you find proper checks now. I give some examples. You have Epidemic Sound that raised 450 million on 1.6 billion valuation. Right. This is music tech, right? 450 million. We are not used to that in Europe. Then you have, of course, we had the great successes of Spotify and the such. There is that is fundraised like Patreon raising 155 million on the 4 billion valuation. It's 4 billion. So we get to a point where having a unicorn out of Europe, or a few unicorn was, we made it, great. To let's go 10, 50, 100 unicorns, and let's push and let's be competitive on the global market. And I think Europe, personally, that was very slow at starting that, and it's still the case that now I would say that entrepreneurs, VCs, and political leaders are starting the process rather than just maturing it very, So there is a lot of work to be done still to reach but I think I think European startup succeed globally at large scale. And we can see that Believe just, for example, in the French market, because we speak about Macron and Viva Tech, they just IPO'd last week at 1.9 billion.
With a $300 million IPO, right? Yeah. It was 300 million.
And it's in Euronext, right? It's the Paris thing. So I'm very agnostic for that, but it's not the Nasdaq. It's not the way that Spotify and others did go, but it shows some signals in the market. And I believe that the COVID has accelerated innovation, and that these technologies, notably in digital, are maturing a lot, and that there will be massive value creation in the years to come in creative tech. I think it will remain the most productive segment for VCs in Europe. We speak about 8x, 10x of return. This is enormous.
By the way, this question I have a lot of opinion on, but one of the things I talk about in the US with some startups is what I refer to as the Quiznos problem. So Quiznos is a sub sandwich place similar to Subway, a sandwich place. Quiznos's big point of differentiation was they toasted their buns. We're better than Subway. We toast our buns. So Subway said, so we'll toast our buns. Now why are you better than us?
Yeah,
and
that's
replicability. The point of differentiation was so thin and so, for Subway it was put some toasters in. Okay, now we're the same. So when you look at companies and go, we're the only people doing such and such, and you go, actually, have you done your homework? I can name off the top of my head 10 other companies that are doing something very similar to what you're doing. So once you've taken a look at them, tell me why what you're doing is so much better or so different. In a lot of cases, the problem with being heads down as an entrepreneur is you're not seeing all the time what's going on around you.
Yeah, I fully agree. When you hear such thing as we are the only ones to do that, of course, it's a time gain, right? Because you can discard directly, unfortunately. But I think the cold look on that is to say there are really a very high mortality rate in startups. So the fact to survive is not a given, right? So the entrepreneur should be humble enough to really kind of put himself into this and make a proper plan and execute that right. And once you have entrepreneurs that understand that and are on the right path, then you kind of see the different different next steps you have. Even when you have traction and you begin to have proper business and you are 2-3 million turnover, then you might have like entrepreneurial challenges, or you might have competition, or COVID is coming, like big drawbacks on things. Suddenly you don't have the semiconductor elements that you need to build your devices,
right?
And that really needs a lot of resilience and a lot of power to be able to push further. I think it's the idea to really have this mindset. You should have kind of, in my eyes, to have a mental map of success to trigger success. So you have to be wired towards succeeding in a very highly competitive market. And there are many ways you can also do this, take a path where you will become a zombie startup that doesn't really survive and so on. There are many of these, but the idea, when you look really at those that survive best and thrive, because the idea is not to survive, right? It's to thrive. Then it needs a lot of discipline and a lot of efforts to get there. I think it's an art push that is needed.
One of the companies that I met through you, and I met them again at California. The other one was Juki, which I want to talk about in a minute. But Mod Devices, which is wonderful, and I've watched Gianfranco grow. It's Gianfranco, right?
That's correct.
Gianfranco. It's Gianfranco. Talk a little bit about Mod Devices. I mean, that was one of your first investments.
Yeah, that's correct. Gianfranco is a kind of Brazilian guy with Italian roots. So it's kind of, he moved to all of this company to Berlin, saying Berlin is the hotspot for music tech. So let's go. And all 8 people flew to Berlin and established themselves there for that. That's something I liked in the first premise, right? And so they create a standalone device with, it's kind of a storm box, if you want, but it's a smart device with a computer inside and an OS that runs the thing. It's Linux based, and it replaces most of the hardware that musicians use. So not anymore like these patches of 30, 40 pedals that cost a lot.
Guitar pedals, stomp pedals.
Stomp box. So it's getting rid of all of that, and then there is kind of what attracted me to this value proposition is that, of course, you can combine like 300 plugins in the way you want. So you have limitless number of patches and creative creative freedom, so to speak. But then, so you take that on stage and you have like your set list, and you just with the one button, you go to the next song with all complex patches and so on.
It's almost like lighting presets.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like stage lighting presets, scenes that you do in computer-controlled lighting.
Yeah, and it's worth like tens of thousands of dollars if you have to have this type of devices patched, and you could not do it like logistically. Anyway, so the idea that I really liked is the creative coding side of things. So they create a platform really where they make a kind of this link between developers and artists, right? Who says they cannot speak and create together. So it's basically you have the plugin shop like you would have an app store, so to speak, and you can download all of these plugins made by the community. And if something is not existed, then let's do it. And you can grow the community and have thousands of plugins and it's musician driven. So I like this product. It was just launched in the US with Reverb.com, the flagship product, the mod Dwarf, last week, and so I was happy about that. And I think it's a very innovative product. And the idea is to grow this creative coding platform. And I think it links back to something that I believe is happening now. Is companies are thinking about empowering creators at scale. And I think you see a lot more of these semi-professionals. So it's not only the professional creative for films, for gaming, but there is this longer tail with semi-professionals, and you unleash because the cost of the all creative devices to create content is so much cheaper than before, that some people are advocating for kind of a renaissance, a new renaissance, in this sense that now we can really create at scale. And Patreon is really interesting in this extent, with Jacques Conte leading the way. And I think this is a bit this idea for mod devices, is to have these creative platforms. Everybody can create. Let's do it and let's create together and let's share. So the shareability, I like.
Can you pull up on your laptop for a moment a picture of the Dwarf device so people understand? Just as a quick image, because we're talking in the abstract. Most guitarists have pedals, a pedal board at their feet to pick different size sounds like phase and wah-wah and flange and all these different signal processing things. What was cool about the mod devices, the first one and now this one, is the simplicity, once you get the hang of it, of creating a signal chain that is a preset. By the way, for those of you who I might be friends with on Facebook, if I haven't mentioned this, last night or 2 nights ago, I posted that I was reheating Chinese food in my room using a hairdryer and an ice bucket. And a friend of mine, Tommaso, sent me, here's a heater for your room. It's hilarious. But I want to thank him for this. There was a question that came up a minute ago. We got to take a look at it. And then I have 2 closing questions for you that you need to answer in 30 seconds each. So, Christy, if you can put that question back up. Well, did you get the image? Is it ready?
So the image is ready. I don't know if
oh, here we go. Oh, okay. So this is the Mod Dwarf.
It's a little device like that. And as you can see, you can do, limitless patches and just with a click of a button, you download that. And what is great is that, Ted, if you work like 1 month on the greatest effect chain ever, you tell me, Vincent, try it out. And you just said it to me. And in 1 click, I have it in the device. Right. So I don't really like electronic musicians like live acts and hip hop artists. That I don't like that they look like secretaries when they are on stage. So I like the idea that this allows you to get rid of your computer. You just bring that on stage, and you can build endless MIDI instruments, loopers, synth and effect chain. So for me, it's the perfect effect tool in the digital world. I think this is the kind of
very cool. Yeah, as you can see here on the things that we're scrolling through, it replaces pedal board. It replaces this 3 foot by 4 foot monstrosity that sits at most people's feet. Boy, you've got a busy screen. So we had a question that I want to address for a minute, and then you have 1 minute to answer a couple of parting questions. Mm-hmm. One was, during the pandemic around the world, streaming live was triage to keep artists connected with their audience. There is one school of thought that, okay, live music is either back right now or will be in the next 60 to 90 days, so we don't need to do streaming anymore. I'm of the camp that it's introduced people to the possibility of maybe I can't go to a show at a club because it's over 18 or over 21, but I'd still like to hear or see that show. And it's an additional revenue stream for artists. So they're asking, the person's asking, is live streaming going to continue in your estimation, or was it just something that happened to get us through an awkward period?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I think with live is that it's kind of a momentum, and you share, when you see a concert live, you share emotions and another way of communicating with the artist, right? So if you have it live streamed, of course there is the momentum because it's live, but it can be like it can be broadcasted a few hours later or a few days later. It doesn't really change the content of it. So first, the live stream, it should be clear what live stream means. Right. I don't think that the live stream, like having a concert live, is so much of an amazing experience. It's an experience that was there before. There was a lack of live music for a while, so of course there was a kind of a push on digital platforms. Qwest TV is one that now reaches, for example, 10 million viewers per month on they just launched on Comcast last week and on Vizio in the US. But I think it's not a trend that really is there to stay. There were some, Travis Scott doing the thing in the gaming space. It was not Travis Scott that could basically convince a huge crowd to come in the game. It was a community of gamers of 300 million people that had kind of a nice new experience presented to them as a goodie. So that's my vision on it. So there was a lot of experimentation. From this experimentation, there are business models that can emerge. But I would say for me, like probably 70 to 80% of the experiments is not going to stay. And I do agree that there will be some push and some new formats. I'm very sensitive to immersive art, for example. You have seen what the Moment Factory did with Billie Eilish, and this type of new experiences on being immersive. I believe there are some ways towards that in the future, but I'm not sure to which extent yet.
Okay, so at the beginning, 30 seconds now. In 15 seconds, really quickly, name 3 people that you admire that you consider to be either influencers, inspirational, or someone that you just really admire. And then the last question is, a week from today, who anywhere in the world, who's somebody that you'd want to have lunch with?
So for the first question, alive or dead?
Alive, hopefully.
Okay, so I would say I met him already, but Jimmy Wales, founder of Wikipedia, is somebody that I think is really interesting. I'm not like a fan person, right? So if I want to meet somebody, is to do something. So in this particular purpose, I would like to suggest to him that we could turn Wikipedia as a learning experience at scale with the tech that we have helped develop, and I would like to meet him for that. I would be interested to meet, let's say, Mackenzie Scott, because she just announced that she would spend a very significant amount on art education and art tech and so on in the future, just these days. And I would be interested to speak about opportunities to grow the kind of creative tech opportunities. So that's more like opportunistic, driven, if you want. Right. On the inspiration side, I would meet like maybe Neri Oxman, is from the MIT Media Lab. I think I'm really appreciative of what she does, and I would enjoy to have this talk with her.
30 seconds. Lastly, who would you like to have lunch with next Wednesday? Just a lunch to have lunch, not to do a deal with. Who would you like to hang out with for 1 hour?
Yeah, that's a good question with you, Ted, I guess.
Okay. Thank you.
I think like it's difficult. I think again, like business driven. I'm focused on that. So I would go for somebody that I would take a lunch with Mikkeli, the kind of from CJ Entertainment, one of the most influential businesswomen in the world in the media space. To speak about the future of Samsung and how she created like Parasites that was named at the Oscars, and what is the vision that she envisaged for this ecosystem of TV 3.0 in the OTT world.
Love
so
it.
This would be my lunch. Yeah.
I want to close. We're going to wrap it up, and I really want to appreciate it. I want to close though with a shout out to a company I worked with for the past year. We finished working together 3 months ago, just as I started working with V Nation here in New York. But Rob Gonda from Dacia Digital announced today that Hypertribes, the social network-oriented music service that we worked on, launched today and was very kind to give me a shout out. So here's a shout out back. And to the folks I'm working with here in New York right now, to Jojo and Jimmy and Andre and Simon and Kevin and everybody here, it's been a great week. Vincent, I look forward to talking to you very soon. You remain, I mean, as I've said millions of times, serendipity is a big part of my life. We happened to meet. You introduced me to, as I said, Jerome. Through Jerome, I met John and Theo at Juki, which is, again, if people get a chance, take a look at. And I'm not
great product. Music
I'm not promoting,
yeah.
but I love the energy. He's been working on it now for 6 years. JOOKI.rocks, ROCKS.
It's screenless toys for kids.
Screenless toys that support music. It's, the journey of knowing you has been incredibly valuable for me. It's great to see you, and we will speak soon. To everybody else, it's great to be here. We have a show in 2 weeks. We'll be announcing the new guest in the next couple of days because we're still firming someone up that's on the fence. But hopefully after seeing Vincent today, they'll go, okay, I can do this.
Many thanks for welcoming me, Ted. And I love your stories and the stories that you create in creative tech. Still waiting for the book, but meanwhile, I'm very happy to share about that. I think the stories that you tell and your path in creative tech is really exemplary, and it would be interesting always interested to dig into it and to discover more.
Okay, so live from New York and live from Geneva, this is connected with Vincent Favrat from ScaleUp Factory. Ted Cohen saying bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.